Some things we got to consider, people. Biden plans to offer pathway to citizenship to 11 million illegal immigrants in early days of presidency. Who are these illegal immigrants? I know one thing we got to be very concerned about. To me, is a very, very alarming, and that would be, because we have a man who is being considered to take the position of the President of the United States, who is openly declaring that he will allow into our nation a greater presence of known and declared enemies into the United States, who have been declared enemies of our nation since our founding. An enemy who was the cause of the first two wars as an independent nation. An enemy that has been accountable for the murder of over 350 million people over the span of the past 1,400 years. An enemy that's sworn now for all of our 44-year history that they will destroy America and behead every living American in the streets of their own nation. An enemy who demanded that America pays them a jizya tax for being Christians. An enemy who's sworn to wage war on all who refuse to submit to their world domination authority. An enemy that we know has been declared these things since our founding time by our founding President George Washington, followed by John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, all who faced the wars of these people from our founding times forward all the way up to 1815. And it was clear that these people were the enemies, as George Washington said, of all mankind. When you weigh in the measure of that, in 1,400 years, these people, in their pursuit for world domination, through that of their totalitarian ideology of Islam, have been accountable for the murder of an estimated 350 million innocent people in their pursuit for world domination. It's unprecedented from any other people ever in history. I mean, it's astonishing. And the reality of this right now is that Joe Biden, let's take a listen to what Joe Biden had, because mind you, I'm gonna openly say, because I'm gonna show, and no, I don't want anybody saying that it's not true, because like I say, we can take a look here. This is written from George Washington himself, and in the cursive writing, if you could read in the cursive writing up above, you can see what he's saying in this picture and who he's talking about, the Barbary Muslims, that he declares to be the enemies of mankind, and states that should we have a navy capable, we should wipe them from the earth. That's what he said. That's our founding president. We look here, we can see that Thomas Jefferson, I showed these things before, stated his now understanding after getting an interpretation of the Quran, because he recently, earlier than this, spoke ignorantly without true knowledge. And then after he obtained knowledge, he realized what their pursuit was, and on their terms. And we realize these people, and they've been declared since the beginning of our nation's founding and throughout the first 150 years of our nation, known to be our declared enemies and not allowed in our nation because of their totalitarian nature. But, we have to remember that this is the people. The Democratic Party, Joe Biden has a response to this enemy, party Joe Biden has in response to this enemy killing Americans right here on our own home ground. Thousands of Americans shot, killed, beheaded, ran over, blown up, right here in America. The Democrats pretty much aided and assisted them in coming into our nation. Some would say that it was out of greed because the Islamic nations paid millions of dollars through different donations, funds, campaigning with them, and that they were ignorant and just didn't have no understanding of who these people were, and it was out of greed, and they, by the time like now that they realize it's too late, but no, they knew. The Democrats knew. It's the lazy, greedy, disgraceful Republicans who did that part. It was the Republicans who were complicit in allowing this because, when they started to raise a rhetoric about it, the Arabians and the Iranians and put up some money and, bought them off to sit there and shut their mouth and be quiet, and they did. They stayed complicit because they don't know the history either. Worthless, disgraceful, treasonous bastards, all of them. Republicans and Democrats alike, they have no concern really for the safety and general welfare of the American people or our posterity or this nation. They're just self-serving, disgusting, disgraceful traitors, all of them. And that's a fact. When you look at the facts, you look over the last 20 years, and you realize what these people, actually goes back to the 1980s, with George Bush Sr. And it even goes back further than that. It goes back all the way to FDR in 1934, right during the Depression. Because it was under FDR's Democratic administration and through the Democratic governor of Ohio that allowed for the first mosque to ever even be built here in America, and allowed for the teaching and founding of the totalitarian regime of the Nation of Islam to start indoctrinating the black American society with that fake ideology of the Nation of Islam. But it projects all the way forward. These are, when you realize 1,400 years and America's 244 years new, understand in the pursuit of that 1,400 years, generation to generation to generation to generation, the Muslims, as like any other totalitarian regime in the world, like China, or North Korea with dictators, these people will pursue generation to generation in their pursuit for world domination. They'll indoctrinate generation to generation of their children, and the rulers of the elitists who establish these totalitarian regimes will indoctrinate their children to continue ruling under the same harsh and disgraceful, inhumane, totalitarian tactics that they've established the nation's founding upon. 1,400 years with the Muslims, 1,400 years, And it's the same as it was still 1,400 years ago. The brutality, the inhumanity, the dumbing down of the society, the indoctrination of the people, the totalitarian control. I mean, they control everything. What they eat, how they dress, when they'll marry, what they'll learn, what they'll do for a living, when they pray, who they pray to, when they live and when they die, pretty much. And this has not changed in 1,400 years. These are the people who because their sworn enemies are the Christians and Jews. Anybody who's not willing to submit and adhere to Islamic law and rule of the foreign totalitarian Islamic nations is the enemy and needs to be killed. I mean, and I'm not saying that. You can see right here, this is what Thomas Jefferson, in his research in the founding times, he said. It says here, Jefferson wrote that it was written in their Quran that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was the right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners. So understand, once they overthrow a nation, after they kill everybody who resists, anybody left over that they feel worthy, they'll just make them slaves. That's just the way it goes. That's the way it's been for 1,400 years. If you go online right now to YouTube and you were look back to 2014, 2015, 2016, though the media now tries to hide this, you'll find that, in fact, in the Islamic states right now, because under Sharia Islamic law within all the Islamic nations, slavery is still allowed. They're the only truly still slave-conducting nations in the world where slavery is still legal and allowed and practiced. And they were caught all the years I just previously mentioned, and it's still going on today. If you don't think it is, you're a fool. But they had the black slave, African slave trade market still going on. And they still have the white Christian. They were selling the Yazidi women out of Syria and Iraq as sex slaves, white sex slaves. A white sex slave, a Yazidi woman, would be twice as much as that of a black African woman. There's rules about how the slave values are set from Muhammad, who was a racist, and valued white people as being twice as much in worth than that of black people. So that's why it works that way. So if but slavery, my point is they still are selling slaves in the Islamic states. And